Sports Radio 94 WIP. The phone number, of course, as always, 215-592-9494. And I am ticked. Seriously. Dave Dombrowski spoke to the media on Friday afternoon, and I got to ask a question. What the hell are they doing? They cannot be serious. They watch the Mets pass by. You go out and get Max Kepler while the Mets go out and get Juan Soto? That's a joke. I am devastated, and there is so much fear moving forward that you are going to slip now that the Braves are also getting healthier. And you are now pretty much trending the wrong way every single season. And there's no urgency to improve. I'm losing faith. I am broken down, and I'm aggravated. This was supposed to be a year where you self-assessed in the offseason and really acquired some change. There is a lot of good here, okay? It's not as if you are a legit dumpster fire, but there is something that needs to happen to change the fabric. You didn't have all the puzzle pieces fitting correctly, but you still had a lot of right puzzle pieces. The fact that they are entering the year with Alec Boehm, the fact that Johan Rojas and Brandon Marsh are going to be platooning in center field again, it's unacceptable. It truly is. And I don't have faith in the organization right now, and I'm curious if you do. 215-592-9494. Do you trust Dave Dombrowski and his track record? Do you go back to the fact that he had success with Detroit? He finished the job in Boston. He had a lot of success in Florida as well. Is there something to Dave Dombrowski and his resume and how much that speaks to you? Or are you like me, where you once put a lot of stock into it, but at some point, you get smacked in the face with reality? And I have seen now too many press conferences of him acting like nothing's wrong. Him acting like if you just stay this course, it's going to result in the World Series trophy. And I don't know how you can sell that product to us, because I've seen them go from World Series appearance to NLCS failure to NLDS failure, and it's trending in the wrong direction year after year, and they're not changing anything. Bringing back all the same coaches, bringing back the same players, adding a 31, 32-year-old 237 hitter for $10 million to plop into left field as if he's Austin Hayes again. That's what we're doing. Except he bats on the other side of the dish. They are killing me inside. They really are. There used to be so much flair about this team when we were anticipating a spring training. I couldn't wait. I would lose sleep thinking of them in Clearwater, throwing the baseball around, right? You see the red uniforms on at spring training. We're getting nicer weather, all that good stuff. Maybe you catch a Bryce Harper AB here and there, and you're just anticipating Citizens Bank Park being filled and just being absolutely bonkers with drunk people screaming, and it's always a beautiful watch. There's none of that now. They're in Sixers territory. And it's unbelievable. 215-592-9494. Do you have faith in the organization? Because to me, the Phillies have lost the flair and the Mets have passed you. The Mets suck. They passed you. Unreal. Let's listen to Dave Dombrowski, shall we? Here's Dave Dombrowski talking about impactful offensive weapons in free agency. And, hey, maybe we'll get one, maybe we won't. Here's what Dave said.
I might be a little careful talking about free agency, but I have to be just because of rules, but be a little. I would be surprised if we got into impactful free agent type of signings from an offensive perspective.
Why? Why? Why are we not trying to improve? Why are we not trying to get better? Here's what ticks me off the most. I got a couple of biggest issues, which makes no sense because there should be one biggest issue, but I have multiple. The inconsistent extremes in the box has always been their kryptonite since this Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber era has started. How are they addressing that? Because that's a clear flaw. There is a fundamental flaw in the way they approach their offensive ideas in the box. There's two ways to do that. Either you get an entire new approach and a new hitting coach, and you attack that way. Well, Kevin Long is returned, so there's that out the window. Or some of these tendencies are in the DNA of some of the hitters. So another alternative would be to get new faces in the locker room. They didn't do that either. So one of the biggest areas of concern and one of the biggest ways that you can get better and improve from last season is change your philosophy, and Kevin Long is still here, or get new faces. And this Alec Boehm thing is sloppy. Doesn't seem like he's going anywhere. They tried to put him and Nick Castellanos in a deal for Kyle Tucker. That didn't work. We were supposed to get an everyday real center fielder so we don't have to do the flip-flop platoon based off of splits nonsense. That didn't happen either. So how are you fixing the inconsistent extremes in the box? You're not. Okay, so that's one of the problems. Here's another. Dave and Rob are naturally steady. That's who they are. They are steady, and that's the way that they speak to the media. That's the way they speak to their players. That's the way they deliver their message, which over 162 isn't a bad thing by any means, but sometimes you can't be steady. Sometimes you need a dose of reality that there is something off. And if you don't have the fire to kick it into gear, to get creative, and to do things with real urgency, because let's be honest, even if Dave did call for Kyle Tucker and offered Castellanos and Boehm, what does that get accomplished? I mean, I'm laughing in your face and hanging up and maybe never even picking up the phone again because of how ludicrous that offer even is. So there needs to be truth and a sense of reality of the deal even making sense. You can't just do it and it be so outrageous of an offer that it's not even competitive, and that's what he did. That's what he did. The league is realizing that. The A's are even picking up the phone, laughing in your face when you're trying to get a Mason Miller or you're trying to acquire a guy. I mean, you're out of touch. You're out of touch on what you're trying to do right now, which is crazy. But sometimes you can't be steady. And that's who they are, and it's time for them to get uncomfortable. And I don't know if they're willing to get uncomfortable enough. It started a little bit last year in the playoffs by benching Alec Boehm. But we need to get more uncomfortable because here they go again. They are just running back the same exact nonsense. It's crazy to me. It truly is crazy to me. No urgency at all. And when they do happen to try things, you're never going to get Kyle Tucker for that package. So there's no realness to it. I'm broken. 215-592-9494. Do you have faith in this organization right now? I want to hear from you, and I want to bring in Kyle, who's producing this morning's program. We're going to have a nice 3-hour run together. Big baseball man. I know how that brain works up in your your head there. How do you feel about this Phillies team and the current state?
Not good. I think you'd be lying if anybody said that they felt good. You've seen this team for the past 3 years fall short, and you've run it back with the same team. After last season, Brodes, the one thing, once they got eliminated, I said, I don't think I can get up for spring training again like I have the last 2 or 3 years. It's just not going to feel the same after you've had the same old song and dance every year, the same exit. We know what it feels like now. All of a sudden, just getting to the playoffs does not satisfy us the way it did in 2022. I was hoping that once free agency came around, the Phillies are linked to certain guys. Bregman's this big talk. They're thinking about trying to go after Alex Bregman. They're going to at least try and sit down with Juan Soto. I don't think anybody thought they were actually going to get Soto, but you thought they were going to be in the mix for big-time free agents. And when I thought of these things, I said, this can get me up for 2025. This can get me excited about this iteration of the Phillies. Maybe they add a new guy that can put them over the top, or at least help the lineup a little bit, not have these terrible exits in October because the approach of the plate is the same. And then Dombrowski does basically what he's done since he's come here. He doesn't go after anybody big. He kind of does this bargain barrel shopping like he's done at trade deadlines and goes out against Jordan Romano and Max Kepler and then is publicly saying that they're not going to go after any other big-name free agents. To what you're saying, the Mets have passed you by. The Braves, when healthy, will pass you by again. The Padres are very good. The Brewers are very good. There are so many teams now, Brodes, in the National League that are gonna challenge you just to make the playoffs. What's the goal for this team? Where do you see them? What is their height or their expectation? Is it a wild card team? It can't be division.
Well,
it can't be division again.
That's a good question. I'll answer it for you. What is their goal? I believe this is their goal. They're not openly saying these words, but I'm only basing it off of their moves. They're waiting to get money off the books to try later. That's what they're doing.
That's what it seems like.
That's a problem. That's a problem. That's not how this goes. You need to continue to try and attack and also realize as next year comes around, the year after that, you try then too. Because that's what you do when you sign Bryce Harper. It's, we now have an agenda. We are trying to get this man a World Series trophy, and you can't start punting years. But then we go back to him and Scott Boras are trying to get extensions done, so they think they got 15 to 20 years left on the damn deal. So maybe he's satisfied with kicking things down the road and kicking all sorts of money down the road and figuring out how they can open up opportunities later. But what's the goal? It's a great question that you ask. What's the goal? Kyle, I think their goal is let's worry about later years and not this one. And that pisses me off.
As it should, because it's wild to think, and Dombrowski has talked, and I get it, him and Rob Thompson have said the same things. They like this core that they've got. They like this team. They're not going to come out and say, we're not good enough, we don't believe in that. But they are a fool if they do believe that. If they truly believe this team that they have as currently constructed is good enough to win a World Series, they are foolish. Teams around you are getting better. That is what happens every year. Free agency is a big thing. Of course, teams get better. Teams make trades at the trade deadline. The Padres have made numerous big-time trades at the trade deadline to make their team better year after year. And the Phillies go out and get Kyle Gibson, Brandon Marsh, Noah Syndergaard. There's nobody of substance that this team brings in that is any good. And I get it. They've got a lot of money on the books to a lot of guys that you really just have to hope are good because you've got a lot of money that's committed to them. But at some point, Brodes, you need to shake things up for the sake of shaking things up. Everybody's too comfortable. You can't just run it back with the same core of guys and hope. That's basically all they're doing. They're hoping that Nick Castellanos doesn't crater in the second half or Alec Boehm doesn't crater in the second half and Trey Turner fixes his approach. Who's going to... Brodes, this is a real question. If they're in the playoffs, who's batting behind Bryce Harper and giving him protection so he doesn't get pitched around like he's been the last two postseasons?
Either Alec Boehm or Nick Castellanos.
Because you are just basically banking on those two guys performing when they have not the last two postseasons. I know Castellanos was fine this year, but you can never rely on him.
No, you can't. You can't. And when you look at what they've added outside of Kyle Schwarber, Now, Bryce Harper clearly is a good signing, but Kyle Schwarber was a good signing. Other than that, Trey Turner, absolute disaster, and I think that's going to suck the life out of this franchise for years to come. Castellanos had a decent year last year, but I would prefer not having him compared to having him. Sure, you salvaged something last season, but he's been insanely underwhelming, where I don't want really anything to do with him, and if I could move on from him, I would if the package made sense, but nobody wants that type of deal and the ups and downs of Nick Castellanos. So really, when you look at the big contracts Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper have hit, you're hitting 50%, right? Trey and Nick, no. And Bryce and Kyle, yes. And Bryce is somewhat of a different staple. That's an organization staple. That's a little different than those other three. So if we're looking at three, that means you hit it at a 33% clip on big contracts. That's a problem. And we're going to get to the phones here in 1 second at 215-592-9494. But Kyle brought up a team that I think the Phillies can be. And he mentioned the Brewers. And I think the Brewers are a good competitive team over the last couple of years. They're a team that they're good. They're not bad by any means. They're good. They're making the playoffs, but they're not doing any real damage. That's who I expect the Phillies to be. And that can't be the expectation after you make a World Series appearance and lose, and then after you unfortunately have a World Series back-to-back appearance staring right at you in the face and you fall miserably at home when you're facing a team that you are significantly better than in the Arizona Diamondbacks. So that's kind of where I think they can be this year, is a team that's punting down the road, and also they are a team that could be Milwaukee-ish. Fine playoffs, and there were a lot of years where they didn't make the playoffs, but I'm sorry, once you become a team that has the talent to make the playoffs consistently, then we raise the bar. And the bar is no longer let's get in the playoffs, it's let's win the whole damn thing, which I thought John Middleton had a pulse to do, but I guess I'm wrong. 215-592-9494. Let's start the phone calls off. Let's go to Neil in Center City. What's happening, Neil?
Hey, guys. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm baffled by one thing.
What's that?
That is by the callers and by you guys who forget that this team finished 52-50 last year for 102 games, 6 games short of 2/3 of a season. This team was a 500 ball club. And what happened in April and May is irrelevant for, if they finished 10-18 or something, you could say they didn't have any momentum. They were a 500 ball club for 2/3 of the season.
But isn't that most baseball teams? Because not many teams are winning more than 92, 93 games. So at some point, a lot of teams can look through a 100-game span and be right around 500. That's just the nature of the math.
Of course, everything in baseball reverts to the means, everything. But the fact is, that everybody had this expectation that we were a World Series team and that we should have been in the World Series and we should have won playoff series when we were a 500 ball club for 102 games.
Yeah, but most teams are. Like the Mets beat us, and at one point they were a team that had 500 record over 100 games.
Yeah, but not at the end. And not for 102 games. Not at the end. And we became a 500 ball club. Yes, most teams are 500. That's what it is. But everybody here thought, this is a team that's going to the World Series when every day we got out, we won one, we lost one. We won one, we lost one. When were we going to just pick it up and magically, be amazing?
Well, guess what? They did that the year they went to the World Series. They sucked in September. Nobody thought anything, and then they just picked it up and got hot and won. So it is very possible, and a lot of these teams do it. The Mets at one point picked it up and just won. So there is a time where it does just snap when you are a good team, and I do expect them, rightfully, to be better than an NLDS type of squad. I can't say that whether they could have won a World Series last year or not, losing to the Mets in the NLDS the way that they did is unacceptable, and I don't think my expectations are wrong to think that they should be able to win in an NLDS series.
No, your expectations are absolutely correct, because I don't know, the stubbornness with which the batters approach, hitting.
Yeah.
It is infuriating.
That we agree on, Neil.
Day after day after day.
And they're doing nothing about it, Neil. They're bringing back the same hitting coach, and it doesn't seem like they're bringing in any new real players.
Well, who are the Rod Carews today? I mean,
Well, I don't think we have anything.
No, I meant in all of baseball. Who it seems that the world has changed, and these guys just have these launch angles, and no one cares about knocking in a run or advancing the runner. I mean, I'm old.
Yeah, we just got to find that happy medium. I think there's plenty of times, Neil, and I appreciate the phone call. Thank you very much. I think there's plenty of times where we can rely on that more. I don't want to become a Cleveland Indians small ball team. They don't go anywhere. So I don't want to just automatically get to a point where I don't care about hitting homers and smashing bombs, because guess what the Dodgers do? I've watched Shohei Ohtani hit a lot of home runs. I've watched a lot of the teams hit a lot of home runs that go deep into the playoffs. Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, grand slam off of Estevez. I won a lot of power on my team, but I do think there are times where they get so insanely obsessed with it that there is a deficiency involved with their overall approach. But back to the whole, they were 500 over 100-something games. At the end, in the beginning, in the middle, it doesn't really matter, because I've seen this team go to the World Series when nobody thought that they even deserved to make the playoffs. The year they went to the World Series, I remember fielding phone calls that people would rather them miss than make it because they were so disappointed on some of their September series.
I was one of those people.
Yeah, exactly. So it can flip at any point where you don't really expect it when you have a lot of talent, and you can get hot when you don't expect it when you have a lot of good players on your team. And you can look through, at some point, I bet you if you looked through 90 Dodgers games, they'd be 45-45 at some point, over 162. And when the Phillies win 95 games, or 92 games, I should say, and the Dodgers win maybe 95, you're always going to find a stretch of 80, 85, 90 games where a team plays 500 ball. I don't know if that tells me the full story. No matter where that fits, no matter what pocket that is over 162, you could find that on any team. My expectations, I don't think we're wrong to expect more out of this team with their 92 wins last season, and that's sort of how I take it. But I appreciate the phone call, Neil. We'll continue to talk to the great people. 215-592-9494. Do you have faith in this organization right now? Because the Phillies have lost their flair. It's at the point where the Mets have passed you, and that makes me sick. 215-592-9494. Coming up next, you will hear more from Dave Dombrowski. And there's a big-time pitcher, another pitcher out there. Maybe the Phillies... well, hold on. There's no interest. This individual wants nothing to do with the Phillies. You'll hear from the president. It's Brodes on 94 WIP. I can't believe it. I cannot believe they are this... Is arrogant the right word? I don't know. Stubborn? Maybe stubborn's the right word. In what world do they think that this is fine? In what world do they think this is okay? And where's John Middleton? Right? Mr. throwing the baseballs to the kids before a playoff game, all happy that the environment is all thrilled again. Here's a rude awakening. We are not happy, and we are rightfully not happy. So here's my question, if you're just joining us. Do you have faith in the Phillies organization right now? Because I don't. And the Phillies lost their flair. 215-592-9494. We're going to get to the phones, but I do want you all to listen to Dave Dombrowski. This speaks more of a bigger issue, I think, with maybe the way the Phillies are perceived. There's another Japanese pitcher out there, Sasaki is his name. A lot of people want to go out and sign him. Dave Dombrowski was asked about potentially landing him. Here's what he had to say.
I have not been invited to talk to him at this point.
Huh?
And I'd have to say I'm not making any proclamations because we haven't been told, but it's probably running a little bit late if we're going to be invited to the table. But we've sent in our original information to him that was requested. They know that we very much would like to have a presentation, but so far we haven't been invited to the table.
Are we not desired anymore? Are we not a desiring place to be? That sentence or question even made sense. There was once a time where people watched CBP from a distance and went, whoa, I want to play there. Now, I don't know. There's a lot to deal with when it comes to, Japanese players and maybe Shohei Ohtani and the Dodgers, and there's a lot more to it, all right? I'm just upset right now. And I'm wondering if we're not even getting a chance to sit at the table and to show a pitch, to pitch what we can provide for you, that type of ordeal, we can't even get that. Are we looked at a certain way where the Phillies? I don't know. I don't know if that's a destination I'm even willing to hear out. Whoa. Smack in the face.